这一点大家请放心。然后我们游戏的所有的售卖是非常良心的，同时我们所有的皮肤是一定严格遵循现代写实军事的调性去设计。
So with Delta Force releasing this week into open beta for everybody, and you can even go and pre-download it now on Steam at this very moment, I figured this would be a great time to discuss how annoyed I am that these developers these days, and not even just these days, and I'll get to that, but it seems like they want to tell you what you want to hear every time, and then they just pull the rug out from under you and completely switch it up. Telling people who asked you in an Ask Shadow Anything Q&A whether or not you're going to have ridiculous cosmetics or if they're going to be grounded in a realistic fashion that fits within the lore and the atmosphere of the game. And you say yes. And you not just say yes, you go on a whole spiel about how it's important. And then we all see this shit released about a month or so ago of this golden camo, this ridiculousness that doesn't fit grounded aesthetics. It doesn't fit. No one, show me anybody running around Ukraine right now on the battlefield that looks like that, and maybe I will change my opinion. But I can tell you, from my experience, from what I have seen, from what, common sense dictates, that ain't grounded in reality. That's flashy and ridiculous. That's like Call of Duty Mobile. That's like Call of Duty in general, just looking crazy with your Nicki Minaj cosmetic. See, but then I think back, and I remember when Shadow himself, in another Q&A, when he was asked about people saying, there's a hero aesthetic to this, it's a hero shooter, it's generic, well, what are you going to do about that? Most people don't want... And he just was like, no, this is not a hero shooter. It may look that way, but we have operators, and our operators have unique abilities which can change up the gameplay and offer interesting gameplay dynamics. That is what a fucking hero shooter is, my guy. Like, you play as an operator, you pick a character who looks a specific way, who has a specific name, who has a specific ability, and he's able to do only one or two things. It's a special trait, and that's not interchangeable between the operators. That is what you call a hero shooter. That is exactly what that is. And then if you're going to pimp them out with all kinds of cosmetics tailored to their individuality, that is a hero shooter. Through and through. You can deny it, you can make the wording fancy, you can dance around the truth, but the reality is, it's a hero shooter. Look at Battlefield 2042. It's essentially a hero shooter. The exact same thing. The one aspect that people hated and despised about Battlefield 2042, there's a whole lot of problems with that game, but Battlefield 2042, that was one aspect of the game that people hated, was this operator idea. The idea that there were no more classes. Strip away everything that Battlefield was born from and turn it into this whole new thing, where everybody running around the battlefield looks the same, but not because they have similar uniforms. Look the same because they are literally the same person. All because this is the current trend in gaming. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I find it kind of sucks that instead of kind of going back to what made Delta Force so great, they decided to just follow a trend and go with the flow of what they know will make money. And lying to us in the process by telling us, don't worry, we are doing these things, but we're going to keep it grounded. We are going to keep it in line with what you expect. We all knew, and I called this from day one, and I know a whole bunch of other people called it as well. It's like, this game is Delta Force in name only. This is very reminiscent of Rainbow Six Siege. When Ubisoft announced it, they had a trailer for it. They were showing us and telling us and letting everybody know we are going back to our roots. Remember that phrase? Back to our roots. Rogue Spear, Raven Shield, the good old times. The fact that the closed beta back then, the team names were that, Raven Shield and Rogue Spear. It took like the next test to eliminate that name scheme and turn it into Blue Team and Orange Team because they realized people like me and the fans were upset because the game was not that at all. And back then I made 2 angry rant videos discussing my displeasure, and I'm pretty much here doing the same thing for Delta Force now, because Delta Force is like a beloved franchise of mine. It's what I grew up with. It's like, it's my childhood game. Delta Force actually holds more meaning to me than Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon do combined. So to see it kind of go down this path where it's just deviating from what Delta Force is about, much like Rainbow Six did in the past 9 years ago, it just sucks, man. It just sucks that I can't ever see a game franchise retain what made it so great. Everything has to like expand and grow into these directions that have nothing to do with what it is. Like Ghost Recon branching out, becoming this nonsense, you know. Then we have Rainbow Six do the same thing. We haven't even had a Splinter Cell in over 10 years. Nothing has come out since Blacklist, which again, Blacklist was a deviation, so was Conviction. But at least Blacklist was still enjoyable on its own. That's the thing that sucks about it, is the fact that these games are actually enjoyable on their own. But you're carrying a name, and the name has meaning. And when you just strip the meaning from the name, the name means nothing, right? It's a meaningless name now. So Delta Force, being this legendary franchise from the past, means nothing now. It'll mean something to new players, because they're going to look at this and be like, wow, it's a free-to-play game. It's so well made, and it is. That's the thing that sucks, is the game is actually really fun. Like, I really enjoyed playing the alpha test before. I was really into it. And I will probably continue to be into it, but I just despise the hero shooter aspect of it. I miss what Black Hawk Down did back in the day, which was that you picked between 2 different operator types. You had Delta Force and you had the SAS when they released the Team Saber expansion. When you played as those characters, your team was always made up of Delta Force and SAS operators. The enemy team had a different skin that was just the enemy team. So you were always playing as your good guy operators, and the enemy always had a different look. I mean, why don't games do that anymore? That's not a thing. Now you actually play as the opposite faction. Like, you'll have to play as this guy or play as that guy. Or in this case, play as the same person, a clone. They're just cloning all these dudes all over the battlefield. That's basically what it is. It's just such a dumb dynamic for a military shooter versus just a generic rifleman, a generic gunner, grenadier, you know, like where they just wear the uniform, different variations of how the uniform looks, but you're just a generic soldier. Put a balaclava on, now you don't even have a face, right? So everyone can just be the same uniform faction. It doesn't exist anymore. There's not many games, unless you're playing something that's a little bit more specialized, like Squad, where, yeah, now you're playing as individual factions, but that's actually the tactical shooter kind of route. This is more action-oriented. They took a Delta Force name and they just did something completely different with it. And what kind of sucks, and what reminds me of the whole Rainbow Six thing, is the fact that they actually put in this game, all over the maps, posters of Delta Force, the original logos. You can actually find in the Operations game mode, you can go and find CDs of the old games. You are acknowledging that these games exist, the history of Delta Force. And then you're actually pushing out a game where you actually say, we're not even Delta Force anymore. The most recent trailer that came out today on December 3rd shows you that you are playing in a unit comprised of former Delta Force operators in this new unit called the Global Threat Initiative, or GTI. That would be like me being like, oh yeah, I was in the FBI once. Am I still an FBI agent? Well, no, because I'm in the French Foreign Legion now. So I'm a fucking legionnaire, right? I speak Francais and I shoot people with the FAMAS. I'm not FBI anymore. I was former FBI. In this case, you're not even playing as Delta Force. So not only are they stripping everything, they're literally stripping the unit itself from relevance. Delta Force has no relevance here because it's in the past. These operators are not Delta Force anymore. They're part of something else. And yet you're calling it Delta Force? Imagine making a game called F1, Formula 1, but really you're doing MotoGP on motorcycles. And you're going, wow, all these guys used to be F1 drivers, but now they're in MotoGP. But we're going to call the game Formula 1 anyway. That is essentially what they're doing. They are taking a name, and this is not new, right? Game development studios have been doing this for years now, where they take a name of something that holds weight and they utilize it. They slap it on every product they have just so they can capitalize on it and make as much money as they can, while not actually adhering to what that name really means to the people who have spent money on it in the past. Thank God, at the very least, the campaign looks good. It looks like they're actually going to follow through with something that matches what people expect from a title like Delta Force. Remastering the campaign, that can actually be incredible if it's done right. And although from the gameplay we've seen lately, it looks kind of buggy and kind of, there's like performance issues. Hopefully, if they can deliver a phenomenal experience with the end product, at least those of us who pay for that will be happy, even if the multiplayer doesn't satisfy the OGs of the Delta Force community. Hopefully the campaign can do that. But it's such a damn shame that we can't ever get a multiplayer game that'll actually give us that kind of experience that matches what the campaign is showing us. It sucks. And it's actually kind of funny because it makes me think about how when Delta Force was announced and it was playable and people were comparing it to Battlefield 2042, almost like a side-by-side comparison. You can almost see the similarities. Like it's almost like straight up copy-paste. But yet people were preferring Delta Force overall, saying that it is a far superior product and that this is going to save us from Battlefield. But now I find myself turning around yet again to look back at Battlefield and seeing what they have been saying recently about their next game, which is going back to its roots. A modern setting with gameplay reminiscent of Battlefield 3 and 4, getting rid of the operators, going back to what they were good at. The peak of Battlefield. Let's bring it back. That's what they're saying. Whether or not they'll actually pull it off, who knows? But the fact that I'm actually looking at that and going, yeah, please, I'll have some of that, versus what Delta Force is showing me right now, just because of the whole hero aesthetic, future warfare nonsense, I'm not interested. Unfortunately, because there's not very many shooters out there that are actually really good, I will be playing it because it actually is a fun shooter in and of itself, but it is not a Delta Force game. It is Delta Force in name only, and apparently not even that, because now you're not actually playing as Delta Force operators. You're playing as former Delta Force operators who are now part of this new GTI unit. So, what am I going to do here? The campaign's what I'm looking forward to. I'm going to play that. That's what I'm hoping for, to be good. But the rest of it, it's a write-off for me, much like Rainbow Six Siege was. I played Rainbow Six Siege. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it wasn't Rainbow Six for me. It just wasn't. So, unfortunately, Delta Force went the same way, and I was really hoping it wouldn't. And it sucks that the developers basically lied to our faces about things, saying that this wouldn't be a thing, and then it is a thing. And we're seeing it. Who knows where the future will go, right? We have Arena Breakout Infinite that said we're never going to be pay to win, and yet it's clearly pay to win. Developers over here saying that Delta Force will not be pay to win, everything will be pay. Who knows what will change in the future, because at the end of the day, it's all about money for these people. There's no more passion, there's no more drive to create immersive, memorable experiences. It's just about milking everybody from every last penny they have in their bank account. And it sucks. My name's been PepperBelly. Thank you guys for joining me on this angry rant. I will see you guys on the next one.